Hi, and welcome to our overview of the 5 megapixel network camera series from 3S. This short video is going to cover the 5 megapixel series key features. Then we're going to go into each one of the models that are launching right now in a little bit more in depth, starting with the N1011, then going to the N3011, and ending on the N6013. To start, this series does offer a 5 megapixel maximum resolution. At that full res, we offer up to 15 frames per second streaming. You can actually scale the resolution down in these models and change the aspect ratio to 16:9 by going to 1080p or 1920 by 1080, and you can get up to 30 frames per second in that lower resolution as well. The cameras use H.264 and Motion JPEG dual codec compressions. They are capable of dual streaming both of those compression codecs at the same time as well. And the cameras offer 3D digital noise reduction. Every camera has a little bit of digital noise in it, or is referred to a little bit of static or graininess you might see in the image. This filter is going to really help reduce that to make sure you're capturing the greatest detail that you can. It's a very important feature, especially as you go up higher in the megapixel scale. The series also offers digital wide dynamic range in all of the models. Digital wide dynamic range is a post scan, so rather than capturing the image in multiple exposures, the image sensor in the camera is actually doing this post process. So after it captures the image, the ISP is going through and helping compensate for the highlight and low light areas to give you a better scene. Notice the scene here. This is actually a shot in night with the N1011 outside of 3S headquarters in Taipei. It's a pretty good shot, pretty good scene. You can notice that it still is in color, so the low light capabilities on these cameras are extremely good. But as we turn on the wide dynamic range feature, notice how much brighter the scene gets and how much more detail you can obtain. So you can actually see a building magically appears in the bottom of the scene there that wasn't visible before. It looked like a shadow cast over the image. You can see the storefronts and see mopeds parked out in front of each store. You can see the street where the corners are. So this feature is going to be a great way to enhance low light and get more detail in a very diverse lighting scenes as well. There's an additional highlight compensation feature in these models that will help out for when you're just worried about backlight coming into the camera. So a good example here shown is headlights of a car. This doesn't mask the light out, but it will actually help suppress that light quite a bit to make sure that you're not going to get a fully exposed shot and get nothing but a white image in the camera as it tries to stream that out. And lastly, these cameras come with the IVA suite. IVA stands for Intelligent Video Analytics. This suite will expand in the future, but these are the detections that are available today. We offer a motion detection option. Motion detection note here is that it is a pixel-based motion detection. This is not an intelligent filter, so it does not know that an actual person is in the scene. It's just looking for a change in the scene. This is done with a predefined area that you set up within the camera menu. We have a tampering detection or a blind detection, which will actually let you know if the camera is being covered up to a certain degree. You set that threshold limit in the camera menu again. And then we have a privacy mask. And privacy masking is really used for areas where you have a field of view that you need to get. There happens to be a sensitive area that you don't want streaming or recorded. You cover that up with a privacy zone, and essentially what you see there on the screen is a block appears, and nothing behind that can be seen by anyone viewing the stream. So now that we've covered some of the common features for this series, let's cover some specific models. We'll start with the N1011, which is a 5 megapixel box camera. We use a 1/3 inch progressive scan CMOS image sensor in this device. It is a true day-night camera with a mechanical ICR, so there is a physical filter in that camera being removed and dropped in front of the image sensor. In color mode, we have a 0.1 lux rating. In black and white, it's 0.05. We do support DC auto iris lenses or manual iris lenses, and it does require a 5 megapixel lens, so make sure you are pairing that up correctly with your lens selection. It is capable of two-way audio with a line input and a line output. That does require a line level mic and a speaker that is going to be powered separately, so make sure you are preparing for that if you are going to utilize that feature. There's a single sensor input and an alarm output for use with external devices for triggering, and there's an onboard microsd card slot. We use an SDHC capability of up to 32 gig max. We do recommend a class 10 microsd card for capturing, and you can do still frame captures or full frame video. The camera is also PoE capable, 802.3 AF standard PoE, or if you want to power it separately for some reason, there is a DC 12 volt input. In terms of physical design, the camera is a blue and silver aluminum housing. Without the lens mounted, it's 5.69 inches in length, 2.56 inches in width and height, and there is a top and a bottom threaded mounting hole. Those holes are going to be a 1/4 inch 20 in terms of the thread type, so it is pretty universal with any mounting bracket or external enclosure mounting system that might be utilized with these cameras. The camera does support C or CS mount lenses. Once you take the camera out, you remove the protective lid that covers the imager up. You just thread that lens right on as normal. If you are using a CS mount lens, there is no spacer ring necessary. If you are going to use a C mount lens with these cameras, it does include a C mount spacer ring in the box. And there's a back focus adjustment if for some reason you just can't get that camera dialed in at a specific millimeter rating. It comes with an Allen key. Adjust it. There's a silver ring that moves that allows you to physically get closer or farther away from that sensor as well. Next, we're going to cover the N3011, which is a 5 megapixel Vandal dome in the series. It uses a 1/3 inch progressive scan CMOS image sensor. It is true day night with a mechanical ICR, and it has a built-in smart IR array for use when it's in black and white mode. That IR array is going to have a 50-foot max distance. It is a 25-degree beam width, and it is actually an 850 nanometer IR array, so you will see a tiny red glow coming from the LEDs at night. We call it smart IR because as objects get closer to the camera within the field of view, the IR is actually going to sense that, and it's going to start to draw back the power output. The reason that's important is if the IR is going to be completely blowing out at 50 feet and an object, say, is 25 feet away from the camera, that object may appear a little overexposed and you may lose detail. The smart feature is going to help compensate for that. It does have two-way audio capabilities as well with a line in, line out. Again, that does require a line level mic and a powered speaker, powered mic, so prepare for that in the install. It does have a sensor input and alarm output for use with external relays or alarm inputs. And it does have an onboard microSD card slot. Again, still frame capture or full frame video. It works with an SDHC up to 32 gigs and class 10 is recommended. This camera does work on PoE, which is standard 802.3 AF standards, or DC 12 volt if you want to power it separately. This camera is varifocal. It uses a 3 to 10 millimeter lens. At the widest, you can get an 88-degree field of view, all the way down to a 27-degree telephoto horizontal viewing angle if you were to zoom all the way out to 10 millimeter. It is manually adjustable, so you do have to adjust this at the camera. There is actually a unique feature we have, which is a focus ring that comes with the tool. So you use the lock screw to help loosen the lens, so you can make the adjustment, but you snap this focus ring tool on the outside of the IR array, so you're not having to squeeze your finger right there against the IR board. It just helps out with the install. The camera housing itself is matte gray in color. It is an all aluminum housing, and it offers a 3-axis mechanical design for the internal gimbal of the lens. The tilt angle is going to be from 0, which is straight down, up to a 65-degree tilt angle up. It does have a 174-degree left to right pan capability, and it does have that third axis, which is a Z-axis, which can be used if you're mounting this on a wall and you actually want to look down the wall. It'll help you adjust the horizon level to make sure you can do that. As I mentioned earlier, this is a vandal-resistant dome housing. There are 4 vandal-resistant screws that hold the dome lid in place. A specific tool is required to remove those screws for the install, but also for security. That tool does come with the camera. And the camera is IP68 ingress protected and IK10 impact protected. So IP68 is basically the highest weather rating you can get. It is going to mean that once the camera is properly installed, you can actually submerge this camera for a certain amount of time, typically no less than 12 hours. IK10 is going to be the standard impact rating for to make sure that dome bubble is shatter resistant. So you can hit this thing with a baseball bat, a hammer, or a lead pipe, and that dome is not going to shatter. Overall size, the dome base itself is 5.67 inches in diameter. It has a 4.49 inch height, so it's still a very small dome for being a Vandal dome. The mounting hole pattern is going to be 3.5 inches by 3.5 inches. Unfortunately, that is not quite a double gang box, so this is not going to be able to mount directly to an electrical box at this point in time. Taking the dome lid off, just so you can see all the internal connections on this camera. All the connections are inside the dome. There is no cable harness for this. Notice on the left there, you'll have a reset button, which is going to just be a factory reboot, a DC power inlet. You've got status indicators on the board to let you know the camera is powered up and working correctly, and then you have your LAN socket right there next to the conduit hole. The external I/O connector is going to be a Molex connector. This is going to be where your audio in and out is, your alarm in and out is, and then obviously the lens is on the gimbal on the raised platform, and the microSD card slot is going to be over on the right. So it's a very clean camera to install. Connections are very spaced out in there, so you shouldn't have any problem making those connections. Lastly, we're going to cover the N6013, which is a 5 megapixel bullet camera. This uses a 1/3 inch progressive scan CMOS image sensor as well. It is true day night with mechanical ICR, and it does have a built-in smart IR array for use in black and white mode. The max range on this model is going to be 82 foot for the IR beam, and it is a 30-degree width. It is smart IR array again, so it will actually back off that IR distance and maximum output as objects get closer to make sure you're not overexposing those objects. It is two-way audio capable with a line input, line output. It does utilize a sensor in and an alarm output as well, and it does have the microSD card slot for local storage. Same standards apply, an SDHC of up to 32 gigs, and a Class 10 is recommended. This camera still does operate on PoE 802.3AF standards, and it does offer standard DC 12 volt input if you do want to power it separately outside of PoE. It is varifocal with a 3 to 10 millimeter varifocal autovirus lens. At the widest 3 millimeter, you're going to get 88 degrees in terms of your viewing angle. At the 10 millimeter setting, you'll narrow that down all the way to 27 degrees. To remove the front lid, you actually just unscrew the lid on the front of the bullet camera to expose the lens adjustment area. It uses the same focus ring as the N3011 dome camera, so you actually loosen that screw on the inside right behind the IR board, and you snap the ring on to make your adjustment from near to far, just to make sure you're not having to cram your fingers down there right by the IR board. The housing is white. It is an all-aluminum housing. It does include a Sunshield to help with some water resistance, and it is IP68 ingress protected as well, so once this camera is installed, it could technically be submerged for a period of time completely underneath the water. In terms of size, the bullet camera is 10.01 inches in total length from front to back. That does include the Sunshield as well as the conduit plug on the back of the camera housing. Height from the back of the conduit to the top of the Sunshield is 3.88 inches, and it has a 3.58 inch diameter in terms of total bullet size. If you notice there on the left, there is a 4.04 inch height listed. That is actually including the screws that are used to hold that Sunshield in place. To make your physical connections on this camera, an end cap has to be removed off the back of the camera. That's secured in place by 3 Phillips head screws. Once you remove those screws, the whole end cap piece is going to come off the back end. One thing to note is to be sure to feed all your cables through that end cap and the conduit plug there prior to final termination. The reason for that is a lot of people will put the camera up there, they'll put the connections to the back of it, and then they forget that they have to put the end cap back on, and you can't kind of fit that over terminated cable ends. So make sure you're doing that in the proper sequence. The Sunshield secured by 2 screws is shown there on the top right in this slide. Those come with the camera, so no need for additional screws for that. But one thing to note as well is we do commonly show this camera with a mounting bracket. The mounting bracket is not included, so make sure that you are quoting that out separately whenever you are ready to utilize this camera. Just to show you the physical connections on the back once that cap is removed, it's very cleanly laid out, very spaced. You have a DC input power on the top left, power indicator button right next to that, your LAN socket, your microSD, and then your external I/O. So you have one external I/O connector, which is going to be for your alarm in and output, your audio in and out. You'll notice here there's an RS-45 shown. RS-45 is actually built into this and the N3011, and what that's for is if you want to actually have this camera trigger a preset position on a PTZ that might utilize RS-45, you could shoot that alert out via whatever protocol you may want to set in the camera. And there's a reset button there on the left. If you have to restore this back to factory default, just push a pin in there for 5 seconds. It resets everything back. This concludes our overview of the 5 megapixel network camera series from 3S. Thank you for watching.